In this story, you'll hear how a man slowly uncovered the truth about his marriage and the betrayal that ran deeper than he ever imagined. The next Monday, after hosting a party at my parents' farm for a group of my friends because they were out of town, I asked a friend of my parents who worked for us to get me a couple bottles of sour mashed potatoes. My cousin Terry got really drunk, which wasn't long for him at that age, so instead of staying in and sleeping it off, he decided he needed to go home. I was able to get the keys to the truck away from him, but he felt he was smarter than me. We met Lena, my wife of nearly 15 years ago in high school. I let him go because he thought he could still walk the 5 miles to his house. But apparently a young woman discovered him crawling through the gutters about a mile away when she went to get the family mail from the mailbox because he was unable to stand. I bombed him before he left my parents' house after she got her father, a very moral man, involved. She took my cousin to his parents' house, and my aunt's father's sister had to clean up after him because Terry puked repeatedly. My parents found out about his reckless behavior and blamed me, saying I had betrayed their trust. In their eyes, I was a complete screw-up, and nothing I said could change their opinion. Eventually, my aunt exaggerated the whole incident, making it sound like the worst thing a human could do. I was treated like mincemeat. If only she had known the truth about her son's behavior, I might have taken the blame more willingly. But I realized early on that the truth didn't matter to them. My father used to say that I had aged too quickly because even my walk had changed. After lunch one day, a young woman I'd never seen before approached me in the hallway before class. She said, "I heard you throw wild parties at your parents' farm, with half-naked girls running around. Are you really that irresponsible?" I wanted to explain, but I knew it wouldn't matter. People believe what they want. We were practicing for our roles in the upcoming graduation ceremony, which would take place in a month on the stage in the auditorium. I was her alternate in case she got sick. But I knew that no matter what, even if out of spite, she'd show up. There was no way she would let me win by default. She became valedictorian with honors, and I came in second. She always said that if the school found out what I did outside of class, it wouldn't be considered at all. We both earned substantial educational grants. As we left the stage using the back stairs that Saturday, I told her I planned to enroll at Southeast Missouri University in the fall to start working on my master's degree in agricultural science. I ran my hand over her soft rear and whispered, "When will you be ready to let me knock on it?" She spun around, slapped me hard and snapped, "When hell freezes over." When no one else was around, I gave in to frustration, pulled her close, and leaned in. Her eyes widened as I brought my mouth to hers and kissed her, long, forceful, and French. When my tongue slid into her mouth, I claimed it like it was mine. If this was going to be our first and last kiss, I was going to make it one she wouldn't forget. I put every ounce of desire into it. I needed her to know. When I let go, she looked at me with blue eyes full of passion, frustration, and anger. I expected a slap. Instead, she shoved me back against the wall and pressed herself into me, kissing just as fiercely. My heart pounded against her chest as we locked into another long, deep kiss. I could feel myself surrendering to this fiery, and it scared me. She showed me right then that when needed, she could be as strong and wild as I was. I was stunned when she grabbed my crotch with her right hand, bold and demanding. She must have felt how tight it was, but it didn't faze her. "I'd been waiting for this moment all year," Lena said. "When you stop talking and start doing, that's when you become a man." I laughed. "Wish you'd told me that months ago. Mind letting go now?" "You've been the only person I've looked at since the day you slapped me," I told her. I kissed her again slowly, this time with tenderness. My hands held the softness of her ass, and it felt like heaven. Our kisses were both open and seeking, raw and intimate. Lena started exploring my figure as we left the landing. If we hadn't been at school, we probably wouldn't have been able to stop. The feelings we had for each other were sharpened by the school year, and anyone who saw us walking out together could tell something had changed. Moments later, we heard a noise, held hands, and quietly acknowledged that things between us had shifted for good. I was waiting for her at the end of the day near the school entrance, where she usually caught the bus. She approached with her best friend and, without saying a word, handed me the school book she had borrowed. We weren't even dating, but it felt like we'd been waiting for each other all year. "How about we stop at Dairy Queen for a bit?" I asked. After I dropped her off, flat Karen, always nosy, blurted out, shocked, "When did you two finally admit your feelings?" Karen, poor thing, was what the boys called a carpenter's dream, straight as a board, never nailed. Sometimes, we called her a pirate's treasure because of the sunken chest. Lena laughed, squeezed my hand, and whispered, "I'll call you tonight and explain everything." I dropped Lena off at her parents' house around 6. Her mother watched me get out and open the door for her. Her father joined her, eyeing me curiously as I approached. I asked if I could take his daughter to the dance Saturday night. I think I surprised him. That was just behind the police station on Main Street. She wanted a Blizzard. I got a shake, both in the largest size. We took them to the city park, found a picnic table, and just talked. When I asked him for his daughter's hand in marriage years later, he didn't object as long as I followed his plans to protect his assets. Since, he didn't seem to know how to react. Lena told me later that he was shocked that someone our age was willing to be so respectful. Eventually, he gave his consent and offered to shake my hand. I later discovered that his actions spoke volumes about how I had been raised. After Lena entered her parents' home, I got in the truck and drove to my parents' farm, and I couldn't believe I had finally. When I kissed the girl of my dreams, my parents realized right away that something had changed in my life. It was unusual for me to arrive so late after school, so of course I had to explain to my mom that I had gotten into a fascinating conversation. My dad smiled and asked me in private, "Who is she and what's her name?" I replied, "I invited her tonight, which is why I'm late from that day on." Lena and I were inseparable on Saturday. After cleaning out 4 stalls with the loader on the front of the tractor, I was in the haul loft preparing to haul a few bales of straw. I did this once a month, usually on the first Saturday of the month, when the horses were in the pastures paddock. I carried everything to the loft's edge and was just getting 2 down to spread them out on the stall floor when I heard Lena's voice calling me. "I'm here," I said. "Have 14 more bales to drop before I go down." I began throwing them over the side as quickly as I could. When I noticed Lena's head protruding from the floor, I went to greet her as she finished climbing. It was amusing how much flat space there was in the straw bales. A moment later, we were lying on the stairs with our arms wrapped around one another, mouths shut, and hands exploring each other's bodies. She was eager to get off just like me, and soon she was removing my shirt, and I had just finished undoing the buttons on her blouse, wondering how I would feel her. Beautiful breasts, if we hadn't been interrupted by my parents honking. Lena and I probably would have gotten carried away. By the time we descended the stairs, they had already come to the barn, and Lena and I had already begun spreading straw in the stalls. My parents caught us in one of the stalls tossing straw at one another with amusement and curiosity, which led them to the barn when they noticed an odd car in the yard without me. When I introduced Lenu to my parents as my girlfriend, they were pleasantly surprised to see that the visitor to the farm was a pretty girl about my age. I told them that as soon as I laid the bedding on the floor, I would saddle the horses and take her for a ride. Mom said, "Let's have lunch first," so Lena offered to help her, and they made their way to the house first. Great Save Jet said, "I can't prove anything else that was going on, and Lena is better meat, just like your mother was at the same age. Don't do anything to ruin this new relationship because she looks like a keeper. If you're considering it, make sure she's qualified to be the mother of your children first." My father was a practical man who called things as he saw them, so he pointed out some important ideas, like the fact that our behavior always has consequences. It was then that I discovered my father had a thing for redheads. Before leaving the house, he helped me finish setting up the 4 horse stalls. Returning to the house after lunch, Mom and Lena had already made friends. After tying the horses to a low branch, we rode to the back 50, where we both found new spots on the grass leaning against a tree by the swimming pond where we had been earlier in the day. She left at around 5 o'clock in the afternoon to prepare for the school dance, and while dancing that evening, my cousin Terry overheard Lena telling a flat Karen that she liked my gentle and sweet personality, even though we both made fun of it. And made fun of each other, but we never did it. I prefer men who can control their temper, and Jet has always done that. She told Karen and my cousin Terry that, based on what I've learned about him, he can be aggressive when necessary. Lena says that when he sets his mind to something, no one can stop him. He demonstrated this by waiting for me as if I were the only person. His cousin Terry also told me that when he speaks authoritatively, most people assume he's speaking in anger. Karen explains that's because he has had to learn to control his naturally loud and strong voice over the years. I'll do anything for Jet, Terry, who says, just like he is for me, piss him off and you'll realize you underestimated him. More than one boy here crossed him, and after he was done with them, they were lying on the ground in blood. When I picked her up for the school year's last dance, her parents were taken aback when I brought her a courage because they said it wasn't a special occasion. Was the most exquisite bouquet they had ever seen. I explained that it was made from plants that were part of a small nursery my father and I had started on the farm. I made it in a neutral color so it would go with anything I said. God, she looked amazing in that white summer dress that accentuated her curves so favorably. All night long I thought about her, and everyone knew that we were now a couple. Yes, she was a real tease to me, and she knew it. I believe that night was her way of repaying me. We spent a lot of time in the house toward the end of the summer because of what we'd done to each other during the school year. After discovering my condom stash in a distant drawer, Mom decided to talk to the woman she hoped would become her future daughter-in-law. I must have understood what she said because Lena soon told me she was taking birth control pills. One evening at dinner, Mom added her opinion that the horses seemed to prefer the stalls, and they've become much sharper in the pasture. I wonder if that's because the straw has taken on a new smell. I nearly choked on my food and started coughing, and my dad checked and said I missed something. He saw early on that I was interested in gardening and encouraged its growth, and with his help, we converted 20 acres of our 250-acre farm into a Christmas tree farm. We brought in small trees at a discount with a reforestation grant after determining what kind of tree would be best for the Christmas market each spring. It was a time of otherness for my father and me, because we spent a whole week planting rows and rows of new seedlings for the produce down the row. About 2 weeks prior to planting, we would till the plot 3 or 4 times before leveling it depending on the weather. This made it quick and easy to plant, and as a result we had already started to promote our first crop ready for sale. The following season we had about 400 trees that were 8 tons tall. All that was left to do was prune them to make them ideal for the retail buyer. My father, who understood my interest in growing plants, even figured out how to label them so the buyer would know whose farm they came from in 6th grade. He said that if I took it seriously, we would have to find a way to replenish the top soil. The city of Jackson and my father came to an agreement to bring all the trash collected in the yard to a site we had set aside for the mass production of topsoil. Our neighboring town of Cape Girardeau soon followed suit because it was simple, convenient, and it saved them a lot of money. We wanted to make the final product as clean as possible, so we spread the ashes from these items along the plot's edge. Once the pile reached a certain size, we added chemicals to encourage the rotting process and maintain the highest possible moisture content. At least from a young age, I spent a day or two chopping up twigs and other materials to make mulch, which could then be filtered through large seas to sift out the non-biodegradable stuff that had to be burned in oil drums. Once or twice a month, we turned the heap over, making sure that air was getting into it to keep it loose. Local building contractors soon discovered that they could dump excess soil without paying a removal fee. The soil was primarily Missouri, red clay that had been treated with chemicals meant to speed up decay. We combined this soil with a biodegradable mulch, which we gradually created as this aspect of our expanding business took over quite a few acres. The important thing was to keep the soil moist and well ventilated. We did not expect that some of the soil that had been donated to us would be left behind after the topsoil was removed, would be used to grade and level the land where our greenhouses were to be built. It took us 18 months to transform the unusable dirt that could only be used to make bricks into high-quality topsoil, which we used as bedding for new plants in our greenhouses and sold some of in 10B bags directly to the retail market. Over the first 3 years, we made enough money to construct 2 large, long glass greenhouses that were heated in the winter by gas furnaces. Both greenhouses were filled with growing flowers that were transported to nearby wholesalers when necessary, using a lot of PCP tubing. In order to water our crops, we designed an expanding hose system and an automatic watering system that hung from the top down. We used the same principles, and all the fertilizer lost from daily watering was collected by a drainage system my father had built into the concrete floor and fed back for reuse when 50% new water was added. This was a very effective way to save money and prevented us from having to build a pond to collect the fertilizer because it was in excess in the water during the summer. Would construct 4 more greenhouses to cultivate white and red poinsettias for Christmas, and eventually, there would be 10. My father decided that with the money we were making together, I could graduate debt-free. I still recall Lena's first impression of our operation, which helped her understand why I chose this line of work. He told her that my curiosity was what made this business a reality plane. After talking with my wife and getting some feedback, I thought about it. Her blessing allowed the family to start a business that is now a significant source of income and is continuously expanding. Lena asked what the farm was used for before it was here raising beef. And my father explained that it was for the purpose of raising beef. You are probably aware of this because market fluctuations can be either positive or negative depending on wholesale prices. By the time I graduated, we had 22 greenhouses that were 240 feet long, 40 feet wide, and 9 feet high. We were delivering high-quality organic produce on a weekly basis, and when our customers demanded more, we expanded 2 of our greenhouses. Our finances were doing very well as expected because we had 20 employees, grew leaf lettuce for the grocery chain, grew bok choy and 2 English cucumbers, and continued to grow our produce without the use of chemicals. We advertised it as organic and demanded a higher purchase price from wholesalers. I joined the family business and took over full-time. And within a week after Lena received her license, she became a family nurse practitioner and joined the group affiliated with Southeast Missouri Hospital. I proposed to her 3 months later, and we had just celebrated our 14th anniversary when my cousin Terry and his wife Karen took me aside at a family barbecue because she was pregnant with our daughter and had 2 sons who were born a year apart from the day we were married. Lena was spoiled by both of my parents, who thought her mom was overjoyed to become a grandmother and become our nanny. The children gave her a significant new purpose in life, and they still reflect the morals and values she helped instill in them. However, I noticed that Lena seemed to have taken charge of our relationship because I appeared too laid back and passive. It appears that many of our mutual friends are worried about our future together because sometimes Lena treats you like a second-class citizen and sits on you until she finds what she wants. To put it bluntly, Cousin Terry said that even though Lena claims to still love you, we all believe that she no longer respects you as a man and is acting like a my cousin, and his wife blew me off jet. Lena is constantly complaining about what you don't do, turning every small issue into a mountain. Karen said you don't argue or swear. You have lowered the power of your voice so much that she can't hear you at all, and you resent them because you think she's picking on you. I tried to defend her, even for you, as a husband should when faced with something like this. She has done more updates, and update your business more than you have done for your marriage. Your marriage cannot be considered equal because Lena is controlling you and you simply follow her. Terry claims that Lena is using your personality and softness to gain more control over you, and you are all displacing each other in your own ways. Terry also claims that you work long hours because you don't want to go home, but you won't acknowledge it. Lena then finds ways to do the same, which some of our mutual friends have reason to believe. Later, while I was busy preparing dinner on the flat grill, Lena asked me to bring over something. After giving careful thought to what Terry and Karen had said about my and Lena's marriage, I realized that they were correct in many ways. I said, "Don't you see? I am busy. Why do you do it yourself or send one of our children for it? You've been treating me like I'm your servant for too long, honestly, and I'm tired of being your doormat." The look of shock on my wife's face said it all. When Lena finally heard the voice she had assumed had vanished, everyone in the vicinity fell silent because I appeared irate. Lena then turned and went inside to find out why she felt so uncomfortable. "Daddy, what's gotten into you?" she asked Luna, my 13-year-old daughter. I've reached the point where I can no longer tolerate the feeling that your mother is treating me like a servant, I said. That night, Lena and I had a big fight. To be honest, it had been simmering for a while, and I ended up sleeping on the couch toward the end. Lena said, "You just don't know how extra you are." And that's when I blew it. Our house is going to be turbulent for months, and everyone in attendance just had an awakening. I realized that for the majority of our married life, I had turned my cheek because it wasn't worth it to fight over it. I made this so that my wife could walk on me like a doormat without any trouble. To say that Lena was tiptoeing around me the following morning would be an understatement. She had just been rocked by a new reality when my wife and kids left home. So when I returned from the large office built near the greenhouses the following morning, I discovered what I had grabbed. In my rage, turned her over my knee and spanked her like I did with our children when they misbehaved. I locked the door so I couldn't get in. Couch trying to determine when our marriage changed, I realized that it was 8 years ago, just a few months after my mother passed away. While searching her bedroom thoroughly, I discovered a wrist bracelet with several small charms on it. The problem was that they were all custom-made in 18-karat gold, and I wasn't buying them for her. The charms were so sensual that she would never be able to wear them in public, and I knew that her lover must have ordered them because they were so costly. I discreetly placed it in my pocket to take with me because I wanted it to be appreciated, and it confirmed Karen and Terry's suspicions. I returned to my office and was very quiet about it. When people asked me about it, I simply said that I had a lot on my mind because it was true. At around 3 in the afternoon, one of the office staff members was in my office, and I asked her to call the group my wife was in to see if she was accepting new clients. I'd love to do that, but may I ask why Fiona asked for personal reasons? I need to find out what my wife's actual work entails. As she walked out the door, Fiona said, "As I mentioned earlier, some rumors have come to my attention that I need to prove are not true." Karen's sister was a military widow who had joined our company while her husband was in the military and was now raising her daughter alone. I often wondered why she couldn't find another man. Fiona was the exact opposite of her sister. She was beautiful, my wife, and throughout the years of our marriage, the only woman who had caught my attention. But after seeing what Fiona had to offer in her femininity, I realized I was still young enough to start over. The freedom that came with knowing I had another choice seemed to calm my mood, even though I had known her for years thanks to Terry and Karen. For some reason, I had forgotten about her, but I felt the excitement of the unknown once more. When she returned, the information she gave me was very revealing, and her work schedule was completely different from what I had, envisioned as an alternative to working till 10 p.m. on Thursdays and Fridays. Fiona and I talked for a while, and she tried to ask questions without being explicit about what she was asking. I don't know if she realized it, but she planted some ideas in my head that gave me hope for the future. This gave her a lot of unaccounted for time, and it was surprising to find that she only worked half a day on Wednesdays. Now, the question was, what was she doing with all that free time? When my mother passed away in a major accident years ago, my father and I were shocked to discover that she had left me her shares in the family business, entrusting them to her 3 grandchildren. When I was a boy, they sold the majority of the farm to a corporation at an exorbitant price, leaving 10 acres around the house in their name and another 10 in mine. The corporation paid off the mortgage for 10 years with interest, and they gave me the land as a wedding present from Lena and me. Off the grid for a couple months after I became president of the company, and my father retired as our first CEO, but he still came in 3 mornings a week to stay informed and serve as an advisor. I knew that in a few weeks I would have to go on a major business trip to 8 different company offices to renew contracts that needed my signature. These contracts were all multi-year contracts with product line extensions, which allowed us to raise costs because I had to be away for 3 days. Fortunately, during my first year of full-time employment, I inspected the site for potential underground water veins, and we found one that would supply us for years to come. When we turned off the county water, our total expenses decreased by $10,000 per month. In addition, we discovered a huge natural gas cavity, and since the land had been in the family for at least 3 weeks, my father and I were still in charge of our company, which now employed over 100 people and had more than 48 greenhouses, all producing maximum output. My cousin Terry, our CFO, came to my office to brief me on the latest cash flow statement, which showed that we were on track for the biggest year of growth in the company's history. It was during this private meeting that I told him what I had discovered, and he was as shocked as I was when he carefully examined the report. After negotiating with the big companies, we found ourselves in a win-win situation, even after paying for what we used heating. According to Terry, Lena's father, Leonard LeBlanc, was and still is a deceitful son of. I said that before Lena and I were married, he forced us to sign a prenuptial agreement. It looks like the man she's with has a lot of money. What do you plan to do? Terry asked me to send someone else to sign the contracts, but I said that would give the private investigators I'm going to hire plenty of time to figure out who my wife's lover is. When I got home that evening, my attitude had obviously changed, and my wife seemed to have a respect for me that I hadn't seen in years. I think we both realized that our relationship had drastically changed, and I suppose Lena forgot about it. Terry said that he did it because he was worth millions thanks to fracking to protect his daughter from me ever receiving a piece of her inheritance. I said that if we divorced because of adultery, the guilty party walks away with the clothes, and that's the end of it. I thought it was also intriguing because my father had made the decision to go fishing with some old friends that morning. They had been trying to get him to do it for years, but he kept making excuses and would leave until I returned. He had been away from Lena's house much more frequently during that time, which seemed suspicious, and I had the impression that there was something going on in his life that he didn't want me to know about. A few days later, my daughter called to tell me that her mother was desperately looking for. When I got home that evening, I asked Lena about it, but she said it was nothing significant. When I told her that our daughter had told me about it, Lena said that our daughter must have gotten the wrong impression and that she would clear it up with her after dinner that night. I asked all three of my children about it, and Daddy Mom accused us of going into your bedroom and through her dresser drawers. Luna said what she can't find must mean a lot to her because I thought she was going to cry. I assumed that Lena now thought I knew about her affair because of the way I had looked at her and bullied her when we were at school. Then after dinner, as she was putting the boys to bed, my daughter asked me what was going on. Luna, I'm not sure, but I said that people had told me about something, and if it's true, things are going to get a lot worse around here for a while, because it's going to take your parents a while to sort it out. Didn't result from your actions or your brother's actions. It's been 3 weeks since I found the bracelet with 16 charms on it, each worth $8,000. The platinum and gold used in the bracelet made the chain worth $20,000. Whoever gave her this piece of jewelry knew that it was created by one of the most well-known jewelers in the jewelry industry, because each charm was unique and was purchased to mark significant occasions or events in these two's relationship. If you estimate that she received 2 charms annually, perhaps for before I continued with my business, I booked a hotel room in St. Louis to receive a full report from the private investigators. Here, my fears were confirmed. My wife's lover, for nearly 8 years, was a man I had known my entire life. He was my father. I didn't want to believe it, but the circumstantial evidence was pointing in a direction I didn't even want to consider, so I rearranged my schedule to accommodate the stop and get what I needed. I read the entire printed report after the man left with full payment in hand. It was so detailed that I don't know how I didn't throw up, but fortunately on the way back from Canada, I bought a couple bottles of scotch at the duty-free store and drank more than a couple strong shots. As I read the report, I plucked up the courage to call my former father, Leonard LeBlanc, and ask for his personal email account. Leonard was a proud man who had his own values, and I detested what this report contained. Leonard asked, "I want you to know what's in store for you," and I replied, "Because you wouldn't believe it if you heard it from me." This dossier was handed to me about 2 hours ago, and it cost me $6,000 to obtain. After receiving the letter, I sent it to him via my laptop and waited for the phone call that was about to happen. I knew that if I didn't tell him the truth, he would help Lena destroy me during our divorce. Why in the hell would I do that? He was over 6 feet tall when you first met him, but he was just as clumsy and awkward as the rest of them. He was the son of an alligator hunter whose father became wealthy and successful with his simple words and everyday manners. He gave the impression of a dullard, But many CEOs were taken aback when they signed a very difficult deal and discovered that he had only... As soon as my cell phone rang, I answered it as expected, and it was my father-in-law, Jesus Christ Jet. Leonard said, "You were right. If you had told me, I would have called you're the biggest liar in the country. How much worse is it going to get from here? I'm going to do the same thing them as." I had been working for them for 6 months when he was in charge of the corporation, and he already knew how to improve their profitability and productivity by using their weaknesses against themselves. He would have already shaved millions off their starting price. Leonard LeBlanc was a devout man who never went to church in his life. He had his own opinions about what was right and wrong, whether you liked them or not. You had to respect this man for having those opinions, and his life support said it all. I said there would be no mercy for either of them, and I don't blame you for anything, son. He said, "Just promise me that you won't do anything before we talk to you and our words won't be recorded." I found a bracelet with a lot of charms on it that was appraised and turned out to be custom made. I said last Monday when I was in Montreal that I arranged to have it shipped to my wife from Paris, 1 piece at a time, and it will be sent by courier, 1 piece at a time, to arrive at her workplace with a note. I will get in touch with you and your lover at the right time so that you can make the arrangements. He laughed and said, "I like that if she'll be home tonight." Lena's father said, "Why would it give me time to find a buyer for my shares in the corporation because I'm going to sell my father's dream?" I replied, "Because it's the only thing that can hurt him as much as it hurts me. It will throw them off balance psychologically for the near future." I clarified that their fears would become more apparent as the date of my return approaches, and the 16 pieces must be in her possession before I return home, Jesus Jet. She's going to become insane, and so will he. After he picked up the phone, I relaxed knowing that Leonard LeBlanc wouldn't wait for anyone because he was from the swamps and knew how to solve a case without asking questions. I was in the center of New York City staying at the Trump Hotel, where one of the many restaurants offered fantastic dinners. Leonard asked me if I had 2 more weeks to live out of a suitcase. I replied that from the moment the first courier letter hit my eyes, they'll be the walking dead, and it would have been easier if they were dead. Fortunately, I was supposed to go for home on Friday, so I was still seated at my desk when the investigators approached me with the sad news. It was far past 9 p.m. When my father passed away. I was shocked and had to inquire as to what had happened. It turns out that on a Wednesday afternoon while the kids were at school, they went horseback riding and decided to cool off. So my wife and he went to swim in the back half of the pond, where Lena and I used to spend a lot of time when we first started dating. Prior to Lena, because it was a hot day, the local authorities thought that someone had dumped a pet alligator in it a few years prior, and it had adapted to its new home. After divers discovered my father's body and killed the alligator, we 3 realized the situation. My wife Ina was fine, but she was grieving deeply because her father-in-law had passed away just before her eyes, and our kids stayed with their grandparents until my wife managed to get things under control. After making myself a stiff drink, I called Leonard Leon, who immediately answered. I asked him how the kids were doing for the midlines, and he replied in slang that they were upset, but not more than what I think is typical for kids their age. I then excused myself to attend a few personal matters, but as I made my way back to my room, I couldn't help but think that I never wanted to get on his bad side. I wondered what he had planned for his daughter. Age, can I talk to them if they're still walking? I talked to all 3 of my children for an hour before they returned Grandpa's cell phone. From what I understand, Lena was able to explain that Leonard said, "Your father drowned because an alligator dragged him away with it." They discovered his naked body in the refrigerator with several dead animals. His body wasn't bitten, but it had some scratches, so I would recommend a closed casket. "Thank you, Dad," I said. "Really, I'll be home Saturday morning to handle the funeral." Before saying goodbye, I called Lena, and based on the reports, she was in serious condition. It was difficult to have a conversation with her because she wouldn't stop crying and couldn't understand how they might not have seen an alligator before since they had a horseback ride every Wednesday. I asked if it was normal for the 2 of them to go swimming naked, but she couldn't handle it. "Arrangements. I'll let you go because I'd better call my wife and see how she's handling it. Sounds good after all. At times like this, you have to keep up appearances," he said. It appears that after my wife fainted while trying to drown her grief, a gas explosion blew out part of the house, and she didn't get out in time and was crushed to death by the debris. I came in and asked if I could speed up the process because I needed to fly out as soon as possible, and fortunately they understood me and I ended up getting a better deal. I dropped the call since she knew I knew the truth. The following morning, I had a business meeting when I was called in by the same 2 detectives I had met the previous evening. My wife and I are counting on you, the grandchild, to stay with us until things are settled. Dad said that will give you time to get things organized and settled. How is Mom handling it? I asked her, and she was having a hard time until the police told us this afternoon that she was your father's longtime mistress. I was fortunate enough to catch the last plane to Cape that evening. When I got off the 12-seater plane, I saw my father-in-law waiting for me. Dad said they confirmed their suspicions when they discovered the blackmail notes Lena had been receiving in your father's office, which is interesting. I said that must have bothered them. What shocked them, though, was that they discovered a bracelet with 16 different erotic charms, all of which were undressed. Dad added that this could be interpreted as an example of what lovers did in those days. Of course, they planned to talk to you after the funeral, so how do you propose? I set up a meeting with them. I said, it's easy. Take the private investigators, report with you and give them right away. It'll prove you had no motive to frame them. Dad and I went to the funeral home office to choose a casket, and we decided on a closed one for both of them. I then called Terry at the office and told him that contracts had been signed and that I would be taking a few days off. There were many people at the funeral and tea party for the lovebirds, I believe my kids. I knew he said it to remind me that all deaths until they are proven one way or another will be treated as suspicious, and the more open I was about them, the less likely they would consider it a murder. Handled it well overall. However, there were moments when I displayed it, leading some people to believe that the two had a closer relationship than usual. Nevertheless, nothing was publicly discussed about it. The detectives waited politely while the fire inspectors prepared a final report on the cause of the gas explosion in my home, concluding that it was a defective installation that had been completed while I was away from home. I was informed that I could file a lawsuit against the gas company after I received the report. I used my father-in-law's printer to show them the pretrial detention agreement and the private investigators' report, and I gave them a copy to take with me. They thanked me for sharing this information because it cleared up any unresolved issues that might have arisen when others reviewed their final report and rendered a decision on the matter. They found nothing to prove negligent death and loss of home at the time the alligator was put in the pond. Lena's father and I were sitting on the back patio drinking cold beverages. I was at Macy's making big purchases when Leonard smiled and said, "I always knew you were a smart man who knew what to say when it was needed." I remembered my conversation with the detectives when he said, "My wife and I are going to change our will, leaving everything to the kids in a living trust that will be controlled by you until they reach the age of 30. Do you want to know if I had anything to do with what happened, Dad?" I said, "It doesn't matter." That overwhelmed me when Fiona ran into me. We moved into my dad's house while remodeling mine, which was stale and in dire need of repair. She offered to help Fiona, and we're buying things because we don't have anything left. I said, "Let me introduce you to my 3 children, Luna, Leon, and Levi." After learning what the boys liked and didn't like, we started by gathering enough underwear to last 2 weeks, followed by t-shirts, blue jeans, shirts, jackets, and other clothing. As soon as I could, I paid for the items we selected and carried it to the car. By the time we were done, I had made 6 trips to the car and was tired. The last trip involved buying new shoes, so the kids asked, "Why don't you let Fiona come with us to our temporary home? Then she can come back with you to help you pick out a new closet," they said. "I don't want your father to get the impression that I'm meddling." "I don't want your father to get the impression that I'm meddling," she said. "I think you should go with her." "I think you should go with her," said Daddy firmly. Then we went out to dinner to show her how much we appreciate her service. I invited Fiona over for dinner after she accepted, and after 4 hours of taking the kids off and unloading everything, I called Luna to get her consent. I then made plans on my cell phone to have their favorite pizza delivered. When I got home, I was asked the big question, "Daddy, are you going to ask her out on a real date?" And that question hasn't been answered. Thanks for watching. What do you think about how everything turned out? Do you believe he made the right choices in the end? Let me know in the comments. I'm really curious to hear your take. And if you enjoy true relationship stories, feel free to subscribe. More are coming soon.